Good afternoon and welcome back to Gulfstream Park. Thank you for joining us here on this Saturday afternoon on Gulfstream Today. I'm Gabby Gaudette, joined by Acacia Courtney here to take a look at our 11 races that are on tap today. We have 4 excellent stakes races and some recent news. Of course, yesterday we were hoping for a carryover going into the Pick 6 today, but they took it down in the finale.
They did take it down. We will have mandatory payout today, but yesterday there was also some news. It was Beat the Expert, and Ron Nicoletti was our expert. We do have 3 winners to announce, so congratulations to Marissa Charpella, Patty Malek, and Chris Mancini. You beat the experts, and see, Ronnie looked pretty tough there. He started out very strong.
And that's how he always does. There's a reoccurring theme going on here with Ron. He picks the first 3, 4, 5 winners of the card, but he did a great job, as did all of those contestants. So congratulations to them. And want to mention to everybody today, we still do have that mandatory payout in all of our featured wagers. So we have the late pick 5, the 20-cent Rainbow 6, and the super high 5. All of those must go today. So mandatory payout, and we will all provide tickets for some of those sequences. They are not easy whatsoever. It was very hard to get my ticket, my pick 6 ticket below $100.
Yes, and the pick 5, we were talking about this too. The pick 5, a 50-cent wager, so it's not an expensive wager, but it is a tough sequence too. And even with the pick 6, to narrow it down there and put it on a limited bankroll, so it was certainly tough. But we'll take our best stab at it to try and close out 2016 in style. And don't forget, we are actually racing tomorrow to start off 2017 in the right way too.
A great card tomorrow, too. We have a 12 o'clock noon post there, and we do have 11 races tomorrow as well and some stakes action. So great weekend. It's an exciting weekend, and if you love the sport of horse racing and if you are a bettor, well, you're in luck here at Gulfstream throughout this weekend. We'll show you our featured wagers that are happening throughout the afternoon, and we start things off in the first race, that dollar rolling super high 5, and the first race does also kick off the early pick 5. That is a 50-cent based wager. This is always a mandatory payout, so does not carry over onto the late pick 5. It does pay out there in the first 5 races. Acacia, you have a ticket as we move right along to the 6th race on the card. That does start the Rainbow 6. Once again, no carryover, but a mandatory payout today. And the 7th race on the card kicks off the late pick 5. That is a 50-cent base wager. Today only is going to be the mandatory payout. That is a very, very tough sequence, but we all have tickets. We'll show you. We are fast and firm. 11 races on tap. A glorious day here in South Florida. It was a little on the chilly side, so to speak, yesterday, but it's warmed up nicely, and it's a gorgeous day for the races. So we've got a lot to get to, Acacia. Let's get to race 1, and let's see your early pick 5 ticket.
We'll give you a look at my ticket, and I do think that the early pick 5, I don't know if easier would necessarily be the word, but I was able to find a single in the last leg of the pick 5 to keep it affordable for $40.50. So I singled the 7 Battalion runner in the 5th race, 3 deep to start it off, 3 deep in that maiden special weight in the 2nd race, which is pretty solid runners in there. Then 3 in the next couple legs, and the 4th race, I was just totally doing some guesswork in there in that maiden 12-5. So banking on Battalion runner in the last leg of the pick 5.
And I like your single because that horse is definitely the proven horse in the race. There are a couple of first-time starters with okay pedigrees, but that one is the horse to beat. So a good single there to find in the early pick 5. We start things off in race 1 in the 5 Menahune. This horse is opening up at 7-5, and I expect him to take some money. Acacia, he is kind of a tough horse to go against. You landed on him as the favorite.
He's a tough horse to go against. He's also a tough horse to pick. I did put him on top in here, and it's basically because he is taking that class drop as well. I remember that the connections were feeling kind of down on him earlier this summer when he was running on the dirt. They switched him over to the turf, and then all of a sudden he just kind of woke up. He was second by just a neck, came back and won and broke his maiden on the turf in his next start there. And then he's had some pretty solid runs since then against much tougher than he's going to be facing today. So Menahune taking the class drop in here. Paco Lopez stays in the saddle. He is going to be running late. That is his style, but he is a big, big horse, big, long legs. So I thought that the pace might set up for him today, but he does have to stay a little closer.
It could, and I just couldn't take a short price on this particular horse. Now, he does have the back class. He is the horse to beat off of his form, but we'll show a stat here for the connections, which I thought made this horse very vulnerable for Harry Benson with low-level claimers on the dirt over the past 5 years. Not pretty. 1 for 32, 3%, and a negative ROI. So there I was really trying to get creative and trying to beat this horse. And initially I picked the 5 on top, and I found that stat, and I said, you know what? I'm just going to take my second selection, flip-flop them, because you're getting a better price too. And that is the 2, Magnanimous Mind and Antonio Sano. He does great work with his claimers too. And this is a horse who I think is just, comparably speaking, coming out of okay races for the level, and he does not find a very tough field in this race too. Not to mention last time out he was beaten by a runaway winner first time on the main track from Woodbine.
Yes, and that horse just totally blew the field away, and he certainly is one to use. He's 1 for 23. He's been running against this level, so that is why I did give the class dropper a bit of an edge in here.
All right, that is the first race as we take a look at a nice maiden special weight. 7.5 furlongs onto the turf, and a couple of ways to go. I guess we should start things off here, though, with the 4 Red King, a horse that you and I both used coming out of his last race, and we'll show a video spotlight replay here where he did get into a little bit of trouble.
He was the 1A that day, and you see he's just really, really far. He's wide, and then he did kind of die a little bit in the stretch, which was why I didn't end up putting him on top in here, but I thought that he kind of shot out, and then he was kind of back to last, but he did make up some ground. He's just obviously very green in his debut. See, he's kind of all over the track there, but he did make up some ground, which I do think is definitely beneficial for him.
And this is a horse who, there was a 1 and 1A entry. Both of the halves of the entry did run, and the plain one, I believe, actually kind of clipped heels, and this horse was behind his entry mate. He stutter-stepped a little bit. It's hard to see on the replay. You have to watch it a couple times. We don't have time for that, unfortunately. But the thing that I didn't like about that race, although he did make up some ground, he just looked totally, he didn't look interested in the race at all. He broke well, and then it just took a lot of encouragement from Eric Hensel to just get this horse into the game, and he looked like he didn't want any part of it. Now, that being said, he could improve in his second start, but we both go against him. You land on the 1 Convict Pike to the inside.
Well, this one, this is another one. He comes out of a horse where, unfortunately, there was a spill. 2 horses actually fell, and another 2 lost their riders. So it was just a very tough race to really go off of. But I do like the 2 races on the turf. Both of them were going 1 mile and a 16th for this horse. He's cutting back in distance to the 7.5 here, working very well at Palm Meadows. I do think that he's going to be one. He does have to work out a trip from the rail. He's had a couple of troubled trips, but he has some experience on the turf and some good finishes.
And yes, I thought his race 2 starts back was okay at Keeneland, and last time out at Churchill, there was an accident that happened, and sometimes you always have to question, you know, did that actually impact a horse or did it not? Are we kind of putting too much stock in it? And I thought he was kind of unscathed by the incident, and he just would not go past the horse to his inside. I respect him because I think he's coming out of good races, but I landed on the 11 Benevolent Prince, and trust me, I had kind of a tough time with this race. The blinkers go on for him. He is a horse who last time out did sprint on the turf, and it looked like he was lugging in a little bit. It also kind of looked like a really confident ride. Fergal Lynch just having a lot of horse at the quarter pole and not really getting after him until it was too late. So that was, I think he can improve off of that performance. The only concern here is the way outside post position at this distance. And Angel Crew's in town for the day. It can be a very difficult distance from an outside post.
It is, and that is why I passed on. And I did think that he was kind of flattening last time with others running on outside of him. And maybe it did just take a little bit longer for him to kick in. He does have the blinkers on today. But I did think that the number 3 Disruptor, a first-time starter for Christophe Clement, could be an interesting one for sure. Working steadily at pace Easton Park. Christophe Clement does do very well with first-time starters on this turf. I didn't pull this stat, but he's about 18% win, 47% in the money, and a positive ROI. So definitely something that you do want to keep in mind.
Well, I did pull the stat.
Oh, you did.
Funny you say that.
There
so
you
we'll
go.
show that stat. I actually had different numbers than you, but still a positive ROI here for Christophe Clement. First-time starters on the turf, specifically here at Gulfstream. He's 14%, but still a positive ROI, and he finishes in the money frequently. And I think you should be able to get value on a horse like this, or at least a decent price. So maybe one to use. He does have success here in South Florida with his turf debuters. As we turn the page to the third race on the card, a maiden $50,000 race, 7 furlongs onto the main track. And I don't know about you, Acacia, but I was kind of looking at first-time starters, looking at horses who had experience, and I landed on good old Todd Pletcher here, the first-time starter, the number 2 Woodrow.
I did as well, debuting with Lasix, and has a couple of sharp works at Palm Beach Downs to come into this debut for Todd Pletcher. Eddie Castro going to be in the saddle. This one is debuting at this $50,000 maiden level, but only full brother did win twice sprinting on the dirt. So we'll see if this one can be sharp in his debut.
And we have a stat here for trainer Todd Pletcher with his maiden claimers. First time out on the dirt at Gulfstream, and the stats are good. He's 40%, $2.62, 67% in the money, and it was really, after looking at that stat, it was really hard to have confidence in really any other horse in the field. But I will say, we always want to play devil's advocate with a horse who will probably get bet. And this horse has been working for a long time, and a lot of the time we see that not be good for a first-time starter.
Oh, that is true. There's always some ups and downs, and then you never really do know about a first-time starter debuting. That is where we both land, but you do have some horses with experience, like the number 4 South Jet for Jose Garofalo, who dropped to this maiden claiming level last time out, kind of a lateral move from State Bred Special Weight Company, and finished a pretty okay third in there. Was running behind some solid runners at Gulfstream Park West, but he does have experience under his belt.
And I just threw in the 3 Quinani, a first-time starter there in the exacta limited workouts here, and they haven't been anything that are jumping off the page. So I'm not really basing my opinion on that, just basing it on the opinion that the Connections have won with maiden claimer first-time starters in the past and algorithms. He's been a great sire in terms of precocious foals, so I just used him in the mix too, but it does look like that first-time starter for Todd will be difficult. You still used a couple horses protectively in the early pick 5. I like that. The 4th race on the card, though, a maiden 12,500 race, and we did have a key scratch of the 6, Big Twist. This was my top selection, so I default to the 10, and Acacia, you land on the 8, Bahaha.
Well, this is a very tough race to pick. We'll say that, and this is one of those races that I've often said, well, somebody has to win it. So you do try to decide who looks most likely to win it. So I did go with the least tried and tested horse, the horse with only 1 race under his belt, and that is Bahaha, the number 8, who's adding blinkers on, just didn't run a step at all last time out, but is coming out of an okay race. The 3rd place finisher, Giants Voice, we saw to come back win on Thursday, and this horse is trying the dirt for the first time, plus class relief. So it's a lot of things going on. Paco Lopez in the saddle, but again, I went with the one that's had the least excuses so far.
And I thought that, you know, Mike's Muscle Man was extremely vulnerable in here, and that's why I said I try to beat him with the 6, who is a scratch. I just thought that he had really no excuses in his last 2 starts against very easy fields as a beaten favorite. So today he's really going to have to prove himself. I think definitely you have to use yourself protectively. The only other oddball horse that I used last minute was the one Timo Dreams on, because if you really look at his races, you can try to make a case for him. Last time out, he didn't show up. Sloppy Seal Track, throw that out. Prior to that, he showed speed against Maiden Special Weight Company. So if this horse shows speed from the rail against much easier company, I think he could be a really live long shot.
He absolutely could, and I threw him on the ticket on the bottom side for all of those reasons that you mentioned, and this is a wide open race.
All right, the 5th race, 7 furlongs on the main track for this maiden special weight, and this is where your single comes into play, and I cannot blame you for doing that. The 7 Battalion Runner, good performance first time out. We'll show that spotlight replay on the 3rd of June. He is coming in off a bit of a layoff there since Belmont, but a good performance. We saw Random Walk. He was the winner of the race. There was absolutely no beating him that day. He came back to finish second in the Sanford. Hasn't been seen since, but this horse ran very well.
He did run very well, and you saw there at the break, it was kind of a tangled start. Larry Comas called it. He was off slow. He did actually take money that day. As you mentioned, Random Walk was the speed, obviously went on to prove himself next time out. But then you see Battalion Runner kind of tossed his head a little bit in the stretch. I don't know if he looked entirely comfortable in the stretch. It was his debut start. He's nicely bred, a $700,000 purchase. He is coming off of a layoff for Todd Pletcher, but we have seen his horses, of course, come back off of those long layoffs and win. And I just thought, as you said, the proven commodity in here. I do like a first-time starter for Bill Mott, but if there was a horse I was going to single in the early pick 5, this was going to be it.
And that's the thing. It was a good race. You know, we never know what some of these first-time starters are going to do, but Todd can get horses ready, and sometimes they just improve even here at Gulfstream. He's so sharp with his 2-year-olds at Gulfstream versus sometimes they aren't as sharp at Belmont or even Saratoga. They're just all much better here. So Battalion Runner, I think, is the horse to beat. If you're looking at some first-time starters, you did use the 5 Pollock in second, trained by Bill Mott, owned by Zayat Stables, a $500,000 purchase. But we will show a stat here for Bill Mott, and we say this time and time again, very long in the tooth now. Bill Mott, he's patient. He likes to get races under belts and then continue on. So with maiden special weight first-time starters on the dirt at Gulfstream, he's 10% and negative ROI. And especially this late in the season, for a first-time starter at 2 going 7 furlongs, makes me think that they're giving him one and then probably stretching him out 2 turns in his second start.
I would imagine that's the plan. I do like the way he's bred. I like the work tab as well. He's coming in off a bullet at Payson Park, going 3 furlongs in 35 and 4, and we know that Bill Mott does exceptional work. It's 10% in the win, so it's not like it never happens, but it happens rarely. So that is something to take into account there. But in this field, I did think that he could make a good impression. We do also have another first-time starter that looks good, looking for 8 for Michael Tomlinson. But I know that you had some interest in Kid from New York from Nick.
I was, but just quickly to touch on Pollock and this horse's pedigree. He is by Tappet, but on the bottom side, the mare was a stakes winner at 2. She won her first 2 races, and this horse is a half-2 Artest, who won first time out at 2. So there is precocity, and I think that's very important for a horse like this when you look at connections like Bill Mott. But a Kid from New York I liked, even though he did flatten out. He didn't get off to a great start. He made a really nice middle move and then just kind of faded from there. But with a race under his belt and facing so many first-time starters, that is difficult to win at 7 furlongs. I kind of like a horse that has a little bit of experience, but 7-5 for me.
Yeah, and I agree. I think it's those 2 horses. You do have 8 horses in the field, and only 2 of them have experience, Kid from New York and Battalion Runner. So we're going with the experience today.
All right, that is races 1 through 5. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll tackle the Rainbow Six and the Late Pick 5, both special wagers with a mandatory payout right after this.
And Gulfstream is pulling away. Gulfstream blows them away with an eye-opening performance. Awesome again has won. Gulfstream kicking clear.
January 28th at Gulfstream Park, an icon takes flight. The world's richest thoroughbred horse race. 12 of the sport's finest horses. One race. $12 million on the line. Watch, wager, witness. Go to PegasusWorldCup.com for more.
Welcome back to Gulfstream today. Gabby Audette joined by Acacia Courtney, now talking about the 20-cent Rainbow Six. They took it down yesterday for over $500,000. It was a very difficult sequence, so hats off to that ticket holder. But we get back to the drawing board here today. Mandatory payout in the pick 6, and I did take a look at the ticket, and I'm spending more money on this wager today because I think it's necessary and it's a mandatory payout, so everything must go. So I did did try to keep it under $100. If you're trying to play on a limited bankroll, my best advice is to find a friend and go halvesies with this one. So the Rainbow Six does start in the 6th race, going to be using the 2, 4, and the 7 in a maiden special weight. I do like a couple horses in there. As we move right along to the 7th race, just going to be using the 8 and 10. That kicks off our stakes action. And moving along, doing the 3, 4, and the 6, 8, 10, 12, 3, 10, 13, 2, 8, 10 in the finale. $97.20. We'll go through the sequence, of course, race by race and get to your pick 5 ticket to Acacia, but we do start things off with a very nice maiden special weight on the turf.
We do, and I think that, well, I know that I landed on another first-time starter for Todd Pletcher, and here you went elsewhere with a different first-time starter, and I can't blame you. The number 7, Wanna Be a Player, I actually had circled this horse and then crossed him off and went to a couple others in here because it's not an easy way to start it off, but again, it did land on Todd Pletcher, just a beautifully bred. The number 4, Slamey, a $585,000 purchase, getting Lasix for the debut, a half to multiple graded stakes winner, always a princess. Just again, nicely bred by Medaglia d'Oro and working steadily. A couple of turf works as well at Palm Beach Downs.
Kin to Always a Princess and Gabby's Golden Gal, who was a Grade 1 winner too, two-time Grade 1 winner actually. So a lovely pedigree there by Medaglia d'Oro, and I think this horse is probably the horse to beat, having some steady progression of workouts there on the turf, but you know, it doesn't have to win. The 7, Wanna Be a Player, I thought had an interesting pedigree too. This horse is by Smart Strike, and out of a mare who actually makes this horse kin to a horse who won first time out on the turf. He was a Grade 1 winner on synthetic as well. So there is some nice turf pedigree, but more so the workouts I thought were very special and very intriguing at Palm Meadows. 5 furlongs and 59 and 3. So some really quick and nice workouts. I think I like to see quick workouts, especially when you debut at 7.5 furlongs, because you have to have enough tactical speed, I think, to get in the game. So I did land on that first time starter, but there is a horse who has some form, and that is the 2, Zor Zor. We'll take a look here at this horse's last performance, though, for trainer Tony Dutrow. And I thought it was a good performance, and if you're betting off of horses who have form, you probably want this one.
You do, and this was at Belmont, and it was going a mile in the 16th, or excuse me, we don't actually have this replay here, so, but we'll talk about it. It was 7 wide in that stretch there, and just came running on, only beaten by half a length. That was the second race finishing in a row, and actually, we do have it, so we will show it. Belmont, the turf was listed as yielding that day, going a mile in a 16th, so he is cutting back in distance here. Was the number 6 that day, and focus on how wide he is in the stretch, and he did manage to come running on, but his last 4 races have been in the money, both on the turf and the dirt, so he does have to take that next step forward.
He ran a huge race here because we saw the winner. He went out to the front end and just kind of went wire to wire. This horse just picking up the pieces after that. And even specifically prior to that race, when he did go the mile at Laurel, I thought that was a good race because Hot and Heavy was a horse who was coming out of a Delaware race. He went wire to wire on a turf that was very speed favoring that day. So he overcame the bias to close into that wire to wire winner. So if you're looking for a horse with form, I definitely think he is a viable option. I did not leave him off of my pick 6. I did go 3 deep there to start things off. As we get to the stakes action, the Tropical Park Derby, a mile and a 16th on the turf, and this does kick off the late pick 5. Once again, mandatory payout. Acacia, I know this was a little bit difficult.
This was a tough ticket to craft here, and I stared at it for quite a while. Now, this is me trying to keep it affordable. I totally agree with what Gabby said. If you do have a pal here at the track, maybe put your heads together and try to go a little bit deeper. I went 4 deep in the Tropical Park Derby to start it off, then 2 deep in the 8th race, which is not a stake. We returned to stake action in the 9th in the Via Borghese, which I don't know about you, but I thought that was the toughest stake to narrow in on. I couldn't leave Chad Brown on, so I did Chad Brown off, so I did throw him the number 12 Happiness at the last minute. 3 deep in the 8 Allen Jerkens, the 2-mile race, and then I'm singling Azalea in the last, and I wanted to include Try Your Luck, the number 2 in there as well. But again, trying to keep it a little bit affordable. So this is a basic guide, but not an easy sequence in here, but definitely a fun one with all those stakes.
All right, let's dive into this race because we could probably talk about it forever, to be frank. We get to the 8 Inspector Lindley, and we'll go back to his victory in the Grade 3 Saranac, coming off a little bit of a freshening there. And this is a horse who, you know, I can remember when he broke his maiden here at Gulfstream last winter. He looked like a horse that was going to have a very successful campaign in front of him.
He did, and I spoke to Shug McGahee the other day, and we'll hear from him later on, but he said that after this race, he had actually planned to try and ship him to California for the Twilight Derby on Breeders' Cup Day. Unfortunately, he got an abscess, so kind of put on the shelf a bit. He tried the Grade 3 Hill Prince after showing his class winning the Saranac, and he did have a little bit of trouble in that race there. He was wide, and he was still beaten by slim margins, but I do like the way that he ran in that Saranac. I think facing this field in here, he's kind of sharpened up working at Payson. I saw him paddock schooling the other day, and he looks sensational.
And the Hill Prince actually wasn't that bad of a race for him alone, because I thought it was kind of a strange ride just because he broke well, then he went to go make his move at the quarter pole. Instead of going outside and kind of swooping, because he did save ground in the final turn, he decided to go inside and kind of inside of horses throughout the stretch. And it looked like it took a little bit of momentum out of him. And this is a horse that probably wants all the space in the world just to close into. So I hope that's the strategy today. Get some pace in front of him, tip out, and just come with that closing run. And Johnny Velasquez, great at doing that. And not to mention how productive the Hill Prince has been. We saw Annals of Time to come back and win the Grade 1 Hollywood Derby.
He did, with a 102 Beyer speed figure as well. Camelot Kitten, the winner of that race, so certainly keeping good company in there. And you landed on a horse that I didn't use, so I'm curious to hear about Giant Run.
I like Giant Run because this is a huge turf field, all full of horses who I think are pretty evenly matched. I like Inspector Lindley, but he has to work out a trip, and it's not easy in a field like this. It's all about trip. So I like a horse who has a little bit of tactical speed, and that is the 10 Giant Run. I don't know if we're going to get this big of a price on him. He's successful. He's successful here locally at Gulfstream. He's a 2-time winner. He's got speed, and what I've liked about his last couple of races, obviously the English Channel was a little bit of a hiccup on a soft going, but his race in the Centaur at Indiana Grand, I love the fact that he showed a rating gear. In the past, I always thought that he was kind of one-dimensional, needed to go to the lead, but he's showing kind of with each and every race that he's beginning to mature. He's beginning to be a little bit agile, and I really like him. And not to mention, in the English Channel, it was a soft turf, and he almost clipped heels. You can't really see that there in the short comment, but he did have considerable trouble, so I'm not giving up on Giant Run here.
You could maybe get a little bit of a price on him because there do promise to be a couple other horses to take money. I do like that he has speed in there. It's a very good point, but we do have to talk about the number 9 Oscar nominated, who is coming out of some pretty good races, and he was finishing last time out. We'll show this one on his most recent race. He did run in that Twilight Derby that I had alluded to earlier.
And he saved ground entering the first turn. I thought that was great. And then he was slightly stifled at the quarter pole. But in my opinion, he didn't really run on from here. He did have he had to shuffle a little bit at the quarter pole, and that is a key point. But you see Frank Conversation, who made that last to first move. So it's not like the race didn't set up for him, because it did set up for him. It's hot fractions early. You saw how quickly they went in front of him, and it set up for a horse like Frank Conversation. I didn't see that kick that I would have liked to see from Oscar nominated. So that's where I kind of feel confidently in trying to find a price with Giant Run, but thinking that Inspector Lindley might be the better of those two.
Yeah, and that's the thing, too. That is one of the reasons why I did pick against Oscar nominated as well. He won the dueling ground at 2 starts back at Kentucky Downs. He does like to go a little bit longer as well, and he's trying the mile in a 16th here. He's definitely a horse that's been in solid form. Would have liked to see a little bit more from him last time out.
Let's get to race 8 on the card. It does kick off the final pick 4 of the day. 7.5 furlongs on the turf for this allowance optional claimer, kind of this nice allowance race that's shuffled in between all of the stakes action, Acacia. And you do land on the 6 Lyrical Moment for trainer Todd Pletcher.
And this horse won impressively 2 starts back at Belmont, just kind of wired the field to break her maiden there. She's a $500,000 purchase, and she came back and she wanted to show more last time out, and I think that she's going to be much more forwardly placed today, that she's going to be on the front end, and that's why I did give her a pass for last time in that poor finish, because I think that she likes to be on the front.
And we do have a horse who will probably be decently bet in here, and that is the 2 Moon Over Paris. You could probably argue that she has the bet class, especially in some of her races on the West Coast. Kind of deflated last time out, and we'll show a stat here for trainer Marty Wolfson with horses going from routes to sprints on the turf at Gulfstream. Surprisingly low statistics, so 2 for 21, 10%, and only a 71 cent ROI. And she's run well at a 1.25 miles before, but last time out, so I don't think that was an excuse, was kind of a longer distance. So I think she might be vulnerable. So I landed on the 4 Shiawase here for trainer Brian Lynch. I don't think she's necessarily tailed off. You can see that she used to be kind of in good form earlier in her career, but that was because she was facing slightly lesser company. They've gotten kind of aggressive with her placement lately, trying grade 3 company, really strong allowance fields, and I thought this race actually came up kind of easy, comparable to her last couple of races that she's been running in. She's proven on the Gulfstream turf course. She's 2 for 2, so just trying to find a creative approach in this race.
Absolutely, and if there is some speed up front, she could be one to be running late. The number 3 Akron Gold, who broke her maiden by wiring the field last time out for Christophe Clement, is one that we both used somewhere on the ticket. She came off a layoff and won impressively last time in the good going at Belmont, and she seemed to like being on the front end as well.
She did, and I think this is a filly that could even improve going 2 turns today, because it looks like she can really use her speed a bit better when she might be able to go longer distances, and she hasn't really been able to do that being up in New York with the 7 furlong races at Belmont and even the 3/4 turf race too. So an interesting field kind of in between the stakes action as we get to the Via Borghese, and I agree, it was a very tough field to try to be confident on a top selection. We're going 1 mile and 3/16 on the turf, and we'll start with a replay of your second selection, I believe, Acacia, and that is Trophy for Christophe Clement, who runs several in here.
Yes, he has actually 3 here in the Via Borghese, and this is at Kentucky Downs, which is a very interesting configuration. We've talked about this before, and she was the number 8 that day, about 5-1, and actually was beaten by Al's Gal, who we of course know went on to really prove herself. But Paige, who's another another Christophe Clement runner, ended up finishing 2nd in this race. But I thought the Trophy actually had a very interesting trip in here. She was wide at the end, and she still kind of kept running on, even with that tricky configuration of Kentucky Downs. And she has been running pretty solid. She finished 2nd by just half a length in the River Memories. I don't know if she's exactly a graded stakes horse just yet, or if she will be, but I do think she fits in here.
So you did land on the 8 Daring Duchess on top for trainer Mike Maker, who does come out of grade 3 company. A subpar effort going 1.5 miles last time out, but her best attribute is her speed, and when you take that away from her, it really doesn't give her a lot of hope.
That's why I was more forgiving about the Dowager performance last time, because she wasn't on the front end. She does have the speed. She won impressively 2 starts back, going 1.25 miles, showing that speed. I think she has to show it today to be successful.
I do too, and I went with kind of a crazy horse, and this is a 10 Dad's Princess, and I just think that she has run well against stakes company, and people are going to overlook her because we have horses who are coming out of graded stakes company in Kentucky or New York, vice versa, everywhere across the country, and she's really held form locally, and that might give her the advantage. She's got positional speed. She ran very well off of a little bit of a freshening in the My Charmer last time out. Isabella Sings, we know what her MO is. There's really no catching a horse like that, and I think there's going to be more pace, a better scenario for a horse like this to kind of close into. So I know it's a price, kind of an oddball horse. There are probably more talented horses in here, but tactically I really like her in this race. A horse that we should probably talk about, who you tacked on to the late pick 5, is the 12 Happiness, who had excellent form overseas, and she's transitioned that very nicely to North America for Chad Brown. She's been heavily bet in her first 2 starts in America, and she has been delivering.
She did deliver. She broke her maiden in France, and then, as you said, just really has done nothing wrong in all of her 5 career starts. She came over to the U.S., was a heavy favorite in both of those, won both times, both of them with Irad Ortiz Jr. in the saddle, but she's coming off of a big layoff. She hasn't raced since May. We do know, again, that Chad Brown does well with horses coming off layoffs like that, and she does have the far outside post in here. I stared at this horse for such a long time and just didn't know what to do with her, because if you go off those last 2 races, she is a must-use.
She could be a improving filly too. You don't know how far she can go in terms of her competition, because she just beat a Other Than Company. She just beat 2 Other Than Company. She's done everything right. She's gone through her conditions, and now this is the right spot for her. And we'll show a stat for trainer Chad Brown with 180-day layoffs on the turf going against non-graded stakes company. 4 for 11, 36%, and still a positive ROI and 73% in the money. So I would not leave this horse off of some of those multi-race sequences. Now, watching some of her replays, I'm interested to see how she fares to this turf course at Gulfstream. She's got a very strange gait coming down the stretch. It's almost like a deer jumping, and she's just got such a quick acceleration, but she's still it looked like she didn't know quite what she was doing, but she was still winning effortlessly. So I think she's got a lot of raw talent, and I like her there too, also using Daring Duchess. As we turn the attention to the 2-miler on the turf, the H. Allen Jerkens, named after the late great Hall of Fame trainer. I love this race. It's really fun. We have some interesting horses too. We've got steeplechase horse for Arch Kingsley. We've got a horse making his North America debut, and we've got those proven North American horses who just love these marathon distances.
They really do seem to do that, and you went with one Mike Maker, and I went with the other, the number 3 Taglib and the number 10 Generous Kitten, and it looks like he really is coming in with a strong hand in this race. And you did say it's a very interesting one, and always the question with this kind of race is that distance, is going the 2 miles. It is a long trip here at Gulfstream Park, but definitely a fun one to look at. And I landed on Generous Kitten. You do have to give a bit of an excuse for the last race in the Grade 3 Sycamore. He did actually improve a little bit last time in that field, but he has run successfully at the longer distances, which is why I did give him the edge today.
He has no speed whatsoever. He's actually a fun horse to try to watch, because he just kind of lopes along at a kind of a glacial pace, and then all of a sudden he just kicks it into gear and he does close. So he has the class in here. I think he's one you have to use. I used both Mike Maker horses, but I liked Taglib a little bit better given his recent competition. And last time out, going 9 furlongs over the good going at Churchill in the River City Handicap, that was a very tough race, and it was a soft turf too, and he just started to grind out a trip, and I think that will do wonders from a fitness perspective to set him up for this 2-mile race, because he definitely got a lot out of there. He was kind of spinning his wheels there for a minute, but you're talking about horses who are multiple Grade 1 winners, like the Pizza Man in that type of race, and that's where I think he might have the class advantage, and he's definitely bred to handle this distance by hard spun. So I did give him a little bit of a preference, but the odd horse in here is a horse who's coming to North America for the first time, and that's Spanish Squeeze for trainer Jim Allen. And Jim Allen, for those of us who don't know him, I didn't know him at the beginning of the week. I actually met him yesterday in the horse path. But he did come over from England. He only has a handful of horses. He did get this horse off of Hugo Palmer. And I think he breezed him at Ocala Training Center. Obviously, it's kind of funny, 1.25 miles out of the gate, but he had to go to the gate to get his gate card. Kind of an interesting horse that has a lot of back class, just hasn't been in form lately.
Hasn't been in form lately, and is getting Lasix for the North America debut. I took a little bit of a wait-and-see approach with this one, but certainly is an interesting one. And you talked about an interesting horse in this race. We do have to mention the number 1 Top Striker for Arch Kingsley, who's coming out of graded stakes company going over hurdles and winning very impressively. And now he's trying the flat race here, going the 2 miles. This is a horse that distance is not going to be an issue for.
And Arch Kingsley, this is an old 7-year-old. You know, I think speaking to Arch Kingsley, just saying that this horse, usually they turn him out in the field for the winter. They give him some time off and kind of freshen him up once steeplechase season rolls back around, taking him to Saratoga, to Great Meadow, different hurdle races throughout the season. But he said that he was doing so well, and he saw this race in the condition book of Gulfstream, so he said, well, why not? He's in the best form of his life. So winning the Colonial Cup last time out by 10 lengths and beating some very, very nice steeplechase horses. So he is an interesting horse there. That's one of the better races on the day. So a very fun race to handicap and look at. Looking forward to that one too. As we get to the nightcap here, race 11, the Tropical Park Oaks, a mile and a 16th on the turf, and it does not get any easier the more and more you look at this card.
No, it doesn't. And we'll start by talking about Azalea, as we do have a spotlight to show on her. This horse is an interesting filly for sure. She had quite a bit of success overseas. She's actually Group 3 placed. She then came over and tried Graded Stakes Company in her first start in the U.S., and then she moved over to the barn of Shug McGahee, and this is what we're seeing right now. When she did actually win that race, she was the number 1 that day, and she just really, even having a little bit of trouble, having to check a bit, and the speed was controlled by a 73-1 shot that day, so had to steady a little bit, but she kept running along the rail, had to go outside and managed to pull away. I thought it was a very game performance from her.
I think the important part of this race to consider is the horse who unseated his rider, and Chris DiCarlo, or her rider, excuse me, and who was mostly impacted by that kind of happenstance on the backstretch. And Azalea, it was interesting enough that she was actually tracking the horse who clipped heels and fell, and she was unscathed. She kind of went to the inside, hugged the rail, and everybody to her outside was impacted, in my opinion. So Azalea, she has the back class, but I thought out of pretty much all the other competition that she's facing, again, like Family Meeting, like Stella Rose, she actually was the luckiest of all, considering that incident there. So Stella Rose, that's where I go back to her because of that race. She was the favorite in that field, and I thought she did get the worst of it after that fallen foe. She just had to go way outside after that. Joelle just kind of checking her there, and she's got the class. She ran well against My Impression in the Commonwealth Oaks. She ran well against On Leave at Belmont, excuse me. So she has the class, and she doesn't have to be so far back. I don't know why she has been lately, but I hope that she can find herself a bit more forward today.
Well, that was one of my concerns with her, that she was so far back. Even you make a good point that she was really affected last time out, so you can give her a pass there as the favorite. It really just was an excellent ride by Jose Ortiz aboard Azalea in that last race. But she has been so far back when facing Graded Stakes Company. She's not facing Graded Stakes Company today, but it is some Graded Stakes quality horses, or horses that have run well in here. But it is not an easy way to close out the card.
It is not, and even Try Your Luck, the number 2 horse, this looks like an improving filly. She might have a big season on tap in her 4-year-old season. Just for Mike Maker, she's been in phenomenal form here as of late. But we tried to do our best here to finish on time. We're a little bit late, so that means we are out of here. But best of luck on today's card. Want to remind everybody, once again, mandatory payouts in the Super High 5, the Late Pick 5, and the Rainbow 6. There are going to be very fun sequences today, so get your handicapping hats on and join us here at Gulfstream Park. Best of luck.
Good luck and Happy New Year.